Hello, this is Malorian, this is our tactical team, and now we're going to be talking about Empire again, but this time about the detachment rules. So detachment rules have been something that really makes Empire who they are. I mean, you got the Bretonnians that have the Lance formation, you got other groups that have their own little rules, but for Empire, you might do them as your infantry army because they have the detachment rule advantage. So this of course changes every single year, and this one here is actually now fairly interesting. It's lost a couple of benefits from before, but it's got some very neat ones that have some good tricks now. So let's take a look at this. Basically, you're going to have now something called a regimental unit, and then it can have numerous detachments after this. Now, a big thing that you got to watch when you listen to people on the forums is some of them are saying that you can only take up to 2. And the reason why they say that is because when you deploy them, you have to keep them within 3 inches. So you think 1 unit, detachment, what else can you do? But that's not very true. A big thing you can be doing with this, of course, is going for a much smaller unit of a detachment, because the detachment has to be half the size of the regimental unit. Now, what you can do with this then is, even if your unit is 60 strong, you don't have to make your detachment 30, you can make it 5. And if you think of it, if you just take 5 spearmen, that's only 25 points. And when you're looking for a good little throwaway unit, even though we're talking about the witch hunters and stuff like that, which are 50 points, these guys are just 25. So for half the cost, you have more models, and you can just throw them up, and they can be redirecting, they can be bogging things down, depending on what the scenario is. These guys might be able to even be holding objectives. So you could always be deploying it with their small unit in the front of your regimental, and then still have your major ones on either side. So just as something to keep in mind. And you can even have several in front of your main unit there. So that's one thing to think about. When going through these, the next thing to talk about is how they can have these different support fire and counter charge options. So really all this is that when somebody is charging your regimental unit, if you had a shooty unit, they can declare a support fire, and they can shoot at the unit before they get to do their full charge. And of course that can be handy, because that means that if you're going to be having a shooting unit anyway, well, they might as well be a detachment, and then they can be set up so that when you are being charged on your main unit, you just get some free shots. So by just making them a detachment, you just get free shots. Of course, this is forcing you to go into a defensive role because you have to be charged, but for a lot of times Empire usually plays as a defensive army, so that's not really a bad thing anyway. Now, their other one, counter charge, is really helpful, even though it did take a bit of a hit. And so I want to explain this. This is for people that are used to the old rules. It used to be that whenever you charged, your little detachments could also do this counter charge, whatever it was called, and then they could be coming in as well, and they could be hitting flanks. As long as you could see the flank and touch it, you'd flip around. Now that's not the case anymore. You have to do a regular charge, and you can only do it again defensively. So if your regimental unit charges, they just have to be doing a regular charge, which really doesn't matter because of the way that they changed it. They're just declaring regular charges anyway, so it won't really change anything. The whole point of it then is that if you get charged, they can automatically go as well. Now, of course, if you're thinking from your opponent, what they're going to try and do then to make sure that they don't get flanked is they're going to be throwing some other unit into your detachments first to hold them down, and then they're going to be going after your regimental unit. So that's going to take some playing around, or they might be trying to throw things up and to get in their faces so they can't declare a charge. But this is where the whole dance comes in, and if nothing else, you can still see this as an advantage because they had to throw units away just to stop this little free rule that you have. So, always a nice thing to have. Now with this counter charge, ways you can be getting around this is, when you have your one regimental unit, and beside them you're going to be having their detachment unit. Now, if you just take the regular charge, a lot of times you can't be having them side by side. Your regimental will have to be forward so that they don't just charge your detachment. Now, you're going to have to be having them set up in such a way that you'd want them to see a flank. Now, that's hard because you have to keep them within 3 inches. But what you can do then is you can slant your regimental unit so that when the opponent goes and charges them, then it's a lot easier for this unit to see the flank and smash into them. So that's kind of the age-old thing for detachments. That's the bread and butter, and really a lot of this type of stuff is just like how you'd be doing with any other sort of army. It's just the difference is that you're getting the countercharge immediately, as opposed to setting up something, taking the charge, and countering on your following turn. You're charging on their turn. Now, that stuff is pretty standard. There's not much I can really go farther into that. That's not just general tactics for everyone. But I want to go on now to a very big addition that they did with this, and that's the fact that a lot of these rules that are on the regimental unit transfer on to the detachments. Now let's just kind of quickly go through them. The first one is Frenzy, and this one might not come up very much because there's nothing that Empire really has that just gives Frenzy, so it may either have to be from terrain, or I mean if you take the one mad count, or if for some reason you're against Skaven they declare Death Frenzy on you. So usually this won't matter, but again, it's just really good that just by having your regimental unit affected, it's also going to be affecting your detachments. Other ones are Hatred, and of course the big thing that this means then is that if you have your warrior priest in your regimental unit, all of a sudden not just them are getting the Hatred, everyone's getting Hatred. So really you're saving on buying 2 more warrior priests, which is really good. Or you might need to try and get the war altar. It just makes it so that this one guy that can hide in unit is giving hatred to everybody. Another one we can do is hold the line. So if you do have a general empire there, here I'll pick you up. Here's Shira here to tell you about some of these things. Shira, what do you think about detachments? Is it a strong rule?
Well, I don't know.
You're not really sure right now? If you're going to be taking detachments, do you think you'd really be taking an advantage of the fact that everything on the regimental unit goes to the detachment as well?
Well, it'd be really strong.
It would be really strong. Alright, Sierra, thank you for that. I'm just going to finish this and then we can go and get you some juice. So, hold the line probably won't go into effect, but if you do for some reason want to take a general of the Empire, at least you know it's going to be transferring on to everybody else as well. Shira, please. Thank you. Alright, another one is immune to psychology. Again, it's not that really big of a deal. It might come up if you go and you have one of your special characters which are immune to psychology or something, putting them in your main unit. That's some way to do it. Now let's get to one of our big ones, Steadfast. Now this one's really going to need an FAQ because it could go a couple of ways, which could be very strong. Shira, if you want juice, I need to finish this video. Depending on how the FAQ is going to determine this, could really make them either incredibly strong or just still fairly good. Now what this means is that of course if the parent, the regimental unit has Steadfast, then all the detachments have Steadfast as well. Now how are they going to be looking at this? Is it just looking at the ranks at the regimental unit and then you apply those to all the detachments? Because if that's the case, that would mean that you could be having a unit in the back set up for ranks and then detachments running in the front that could be just going for Congo line, right? These little units of 5. And they could just be running into whatever unit and being counting as Steadfast and being able to bog down all these things. Of course, probably the way that most people think it's going to go is that the parent unit, the regimental unit, has to be in combat, because for Steadfast to really, usually most of the rules have to do with it being in combat. That would really mean then that if you're going to be playing a losing war, where probably you're holding them up with your big regimental block, you had then countercharge with a halberdiers or something to add in some kill. Even though you know you're probably going to lose, at least you know both parts will be Steadfast and you can be chipping away at these guys and really doing your damage. So depending which way that goes, it could be amazingly nasty for all these little bogging units, or it could still be fairly useful if you want to be grinding down. Shira, please. But, however, there's another one here that makes it kind of a moot point, and that's the fact that Stubborn also transfers. So, of course, if you make your parent unit the Great Swords, they automatically have Stubborn. You could be passing this on, and then all of a sudden this opens so many more possibilities. You can be having those little units of 5. They're just going to be running up there and trying to bog things down. Or you can have other detachments that could be more serious but not all that great. Say that just 20 halberdiers or 20 swordmen, right? And really their whole point will be just to go and fight with a unit, maybe pick away, maybe kill a character, but the big thing for you is you know that even if they lose, you don't care, they're going to be steadfast. And so it's just a really great beef or bump that you can be doing to all your little detachments here. And if it's not the great swords, of course you have this crown of commandment. So you put that on a character, put it in the regimental unit, all of a sudden all of your detachments are stubborn. And this is really huge. Another part where this can come up as well is if you're going offensive with your regimental unit and you're worried you might get flanked, no problem. You just throw your detachment up on your exposed flank and you know they're going to be stubborn or steadfast or whichever way it's going to go. The last one is stupidity, which is just kind of a funny thing to put in there because for the most part, unless you have a guy with the wizard hat, which you're going to put in your main unit, or again you take the mad count, you're affected by some Slanesh spell, this is not going to come up, but it's just something there so you know if you take the wizard hat, don't put it in your regimental unit because you're going to be affecting all your detachments. Something else here that you can be really looking at is something that really goes well with that hatred. Now, even though a lot of these times you're going to be having these little units that's either just going to be there to bog things down or go for the counter charge, or maybe it's your shooty unit that you're making a detachment just for the extra shots, you could also be using detachments as character assassinators. And you got to really think that if you either take a little unit of, it could just be 6 halberdiers or even 6 free companies, you have extra attacks, you can now be taking them, throwing them into a unit and then be affecting them with hatred. Now this can be a little bit difficult because you still have to keep that 3 inches all the time, so if they did make the charge you'd probably have to be marching up with the unit to get that 3 inches going, but all of a sudden now that little unit can do its dirty work and try and go and kill the character, and then after when the real fight happens they're already down this character. So maybe let's say you're up against demons, they can go in, try and kill the herald, and then when it comes to the big fight they've already lost that big bonus. And of course you can be always boosting them with magic too, if you're going with shadow magic or something, to really make sure that detachment does their job. Shira, stop for a second. So there you have it. There's the big bonuses we have there. So it's all the old news where the shooting unit can do its support fire, you could be doing this counter charges, but now with all this other parts here, you have the hatred from the priest that can be transferred to everything, and really a big thing you can do with that is think about this. What if you took a unit of 80 spearmen and then 2 detachments of 40 halberdiers? So that's really your big combat blocks right there, and then they're all set up for really tough fighting, and they're all going to be getting all that hatred. Some of the bad news is that you do have from this is that you have to think about things like Watchtower, because when you place a unit in Watchtower, because the detachments have to be with the regimental unit, there's going to be no way you can still place them with the Watchtower and keep them within 3 inches. So that's one thing. Of course, if you're also thinking of placements, you're going to be having less drops, and so you're not going to be controlling that as much. But if you're going with a defensive army anyway, that wouldn't really affect you. You could be doing your drops down, get down all of your detachments and guys, set up your war machines, and you're going to be defensive anyway. So there you have it. There's your new detachment rules. Some very crazy and new additions, and I hope you enjoy them. Thanks for watching. Bye.